Hello and welcome back to another video. iMacs, they're everywhere, and they're infesting my shed. One of which has been there for many years. It's collected a lot of dust and looks pretty filthy now. So what exactly can you do with an old iMac like this? Well, let's find out. Here we've got the 21.5 inch iMac, with no shortage of debris on the screen. Even though it's quite old, the design hasn't changed much compared to even the latest generation of iMacs. The main difference being that this one is thick, which has the benefit of an internal optical drive and better speakers though. If you're not a fan of dust, you may want to look away right now. Before we take it apart, I think it's time we give it a clean with a healthy dose of eucalyptus oil. I felt like it was a good time to get this out of the way, otherwise I'd just be getting dirt and grime everywhere as I open it up. Even just a quick wipe does make a huge difference. If you've ever bought one of these iMacs secondhand, there's a good chance you've seen a lot of grime build up around the power button, which is on the back. To avoid scratching both the iMac and the table, I lay it down on a towel, and with the help of a suction cup, with the help of some better suction cups, the glass panel held on with magnets could be lifted up and out. If you did so happen to break this glass, a replacement can be bought for as little as $50 Australian online. The LCD panel behind that glass is also pretty decent, with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 and an advertised brightness of 330 nits. It still holds up today. Before I can fully remove the screen, there are several connectors that need to be detached. Be careful when taking one of these apart, perhaps follow a tutorial online. And now we get our first look at the internals of this old iMac. That dusty fan suggests we've got some fun times ahead. Before we take things further, I'd like to introduce you to today's sponsor, Skillshare, that makes videos like this possible. Skillshare is a fantastic online learning community with thousands of great classes across a wide range of topics, including ones I'm particularly interested in, such as photography, film and video, and productivity. A lot of the classes are under 60 minutes long, allowing you to explore new skills, create new hobbies, and have a whole lot of fun while you're learning along the way, even if you don't have all day. Skillshare is for people of all skill levels, but if you're just starting out in the world of photography, I'd highly recommend you check out Sean Dalton's Photography Essentials. Learning the fundamentals is the first step to becoming an awesome photographer, and I can highly recommend this class. In addition to the video lessons, every Skillshare class gives you the ability to share your own creations with the community using the skills you've learnt along the way. Skillshare is also very affordable, and if you're hungry to learn, you'll be pleased to know it's less than $10 per month with an annual subscription. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Before we can remove the logic board, the RAM must come out, and as we can see, the dust doesn't discriminate and it appears to be here in plentiful amounts as well. One downside to these machines is that you need to nearly completely disassemble them just to get to the processor and graphics card. I'd highly recommend getting familiar with where all the connectors run through, as it'll make the reassembly a whole lot easier. And with that, the optical drive is removed. It is possible to install a second SATA storage drive in its place, however I still find having a rewritable DVD drive quite useful. Across the logic board there are many small connectors that must be taken out. These include the Wi-Fi antennas and the module itself, which is connected to the logic board with what looks to be an M-SATA connector. Then the various Torx T10 screws that hold the logic board in place can finally come out, and after carefully disconnecting both the power and audio connectors, the board is free. With iMacs of this vintage, both the processor and graphics card can be upgraded. These are features that I'm sure will end once Apple Silicon-powered iMacs come out later this year. I must say, I was expecting the vents to be a lot more clogged up than this. It looks as if most of the dust is stuck to the intake fans themselves. Trying to remove the debris was quite challenging without opening up the fan, so I opened it up, which revealed lots more compacted dirt that sat around the edges. After that I went through and did the same thing to the optical drive fan, which was equally caked with dust inside. The rest of the internals weren't all that bad, so I just took the casing outside and blew it all out. Getting access to the processor was pretty straightforward, and after tampering with the warranty void sticker, we get our first look at the processor with some very crusty thermal paste. The graphics card also comes out easily, and with a few screws removed we can see that it is also in need of a new application of thermal paste. While I had the board stripped down, I decided to give it a dust off and get rid of any clogged in the RAM slots. To remove the old thermal paste, I wiped off most of it, then applied some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of any leftover paste. Is there anything more satisfying than dust getting sucked up by a vacuum? If there is, please email me, I'd like to hear about it. This isn't the i5-2400 I was expecting to see in here. For some reason I always thought this was a mid-2011 model with a second generation Core i5 processor, but I guess I was wrong, and I guess that explains why the iFixit tutorial didn't exactly match up with what I was disassembling. There aren't many cost-effective options past the Radeon 5670 that's already in here sadly, and even this card sells for well over $100 second-hand. I applied a generous amount of thermal paste that will spread evenly over the surface once the heatsink is put back on. Given that the onboard battery is now over 10 years old, I thought I would replace it with a brand new CR2032 battery which can be bought online for little over $1. To make the system a whole lot more responsive, it's time to replace the mechanical hard drive and swap it out with a solid-state drive. First I wanted to put the logic board assembly back in, which proved not to be as easy as I'd hoped. If you're ever putting one of these back together, make sure that none of the logic board connectors get trapped underneath. And with all the connectors accounted for, I could screw the board back in. Since I ran out of 3.5 to 2.5 hard drive brackets, I simply screwed the new SSD to the existing bracket. It's not ideal, and I won't be able to read temperatures, however you can control the hard disk fan speed using an app. Here comes the delicate part, reseating the display panel. And once it was screwed in place, I made sure to keep dust off the inside of the glass. And last of all, the 8GB of DDR3 RAM clicked back in place. With it all back together, relievingly it still worked. So with an SSD, cleaned out internals and new thermal paste, what exactly can this 11-year-old iMac do? Running the latest version of Minecraft with the render distance set to 12 yields a very playable frame rate. It nearly hit 60 FPS the whole time, which is pretty cool. Feel free to join my Minecraft server if you want. Terraria is another game that also runs on macOS. On this iMac it constantly hits around 40 frames per second, which is also pretty playable. Portal 2 is another game that runs alright on this system, even at 1080p on medium settings. I can't say I've ever played much of this game, but it does look pretty fun. In the graphical benchmark Unigine Heaven, the iMac scored a pretty average 298. However, the graphics card temperature did not exceed 65 degrees Celsius, so the new thermal paste and clean out has definitely had a good effect. And in the Cinebench R23 stress test, the CPU did not exceed 80 degrees and the fans barely spun up, apart from the hard disk fan which doesn't have a temperature sensor, and that causes the fan to run fast. And when it comes to web browsing, it's easily capable of playing full HD YouTube videos fluidly. This is perfectly suited for day-to-day tasks. The port selection is also decent and comes with gigabit Ethernet, but it is definitely limited by the USB 2.0 ports. While it's not cosmetically perfect, it is far cleaner and runs much better now. The fact that you can replace pretty much every component without too much effort is pretty nice as well. Thank you so much for watching. This really has been quite a dusty little adventure. And even with the first generation i3 processor, this is still a pretty cool and pretty capable little iMac, and I'm sure I'll find a use for it somewhere. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, and if you want to see more, definitely consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.